Hi, this is Trey Passer. I'm going to do a reaction to a fellow YouTuber, another scary story. This from a YouTuber named Umaker. This is called 4 Scary Stories. Repo Man's Scary Story and Other Creepy Stalker Stories. Okay? Love doing these reactions, so let me get right to it. I'll be right back, but I put my headphones on. Okay, let me put my headphones in. Okay, here we go right now. Go.
I begrudgingly earn a living repossessing bank collateral in the form of motor vehicles. As you can probably guess, most people I deal with are not too happy to see me. For some background, I am not your typical repo man by looking at me. Most guys I work with are over 6'3", 200 through 300 pounds, bald with a beard. I know it sounds specific, but it really holds true in my experience. I, on the other hand, am 5'11", 155 pounds, but I do have a beard. On to the story. I was out working during the day and checking a retail location for a vehicle I'd been searching for. The address I was checking was located in a large mall area. I glanced in my rearview mirror to see a red Ford Focus behind me. He made a few of the same turns I did, but I didn't think twice about it. After the 7th or 8th turn that he mimicked, I decided to pull into a parking spot. I figured he would either move on or come to talk to me if that was his goal. I noticed he was on the phone in my rear view. I parked the truck and watched as the car parked about 50 feet away from me. Okay, fine. I noticed the man driving the Focus was staring and pointing at me as he spoke on his phone, so I decided to ask what his deal was. When I approached, he got out of his vehicle, which was alarming, so I backed off and didn't get any closer. I leaned my head out my open window and said, "Is there a reason that you're following me?" He moves his phone away from his ear, covering the microphone, and yells, "Yes, you're harassing people on private property. The cops are on their way." I told him that was fine and I would wait around to speak to the police. He yelled some more unintelligible nonsense as I put my window up and sat pretty waiting for the police. A few minutes later, a cruiser shows up behind me. The officer approached my window and we spoke about the situation. I told him that I'm permitted on private property unless I'm explicitly asked to leave by someone who owns the property or works security, which he agreed with. Long story short, the police told me I was good to go and asked me that I not engage this man as I left. I complied and planned on moving on with my day. About 20 minutes after all of this, I glanced in my rear view to see the same Focus driving a couple cars behind me, so I parked again out of frustration. I immediately exited my truck and lit a cigarette. The man driving his car screeched up beside me and exited it without putting it in park, rather putting it in neutral. As his car begins to roll away, he turns away from it, screaming at me about violating his rights to privacy and harassing the public at this mall. I calmly told him that I was already cleared by the PD and I was losing patience. I told him he needed to leave right then before I called the police. It was at this point that his vehicle struck the concrete base of a light pole and stopped. He started screaming and saying that I crashed his car. I told him I had dash cam footage that would negate that claim. That's when he charged me. Now remember, I'm not a big guy, but I've dealt with plenty of confrontation at this job and this guy did not appear coordinated at all. I stepped out of his path and guided him to the ground, telling him to stay down while I leave and to leave me alone. I got in my truck and left. Looking back, I absolutely should have called the police again, as I've gotten the officer's cell phone number and badge number. This story all comes to a head 2 nights later in a bizarre turn of events that genuinely scared me. At this time, I had just gotten married to my lovely wife and we were living in our little 1-bedroom in our hip little suburb of a major Midwest city. It was a Friday night and I decided to go grab some beers for the wife and I to enjoy after a long week. As I'm leaving the store with our booze, I saw a maroon Ford Focus in the parking lot, seemingly unoccupied. I made a mental note of the coincidence given the bizarre ordeal a couple days prior, but didn't think too much of it. As I pulled into my apartment's parking lot, the Focus pulled in behind me. I hadn't noticed it following me until this point. I live on the 3rd floor, so I decided I was going to hustle up the steps just in case it was the same guy and he'd stalked me or something in order to exact his revenge for whatever perceived transgression I'd bothered him with. My plan didn't work. He followed me to my patio where my wife was waiting, again unbeknownst to me. I was apparently not feeling very observant that night. That's when this guy snuck up, crouching behind our small fence. Neither of us knew he was there until he said something, still hidden from view. Pretty girl.
Jesus.
I snapped to my feet and began to look around when I spotted him. I knew instantly it was him.
Jesus.
I immediately ordered my wife to go inside, lock the door, and call the police. When I approached him, he drew a small switchblade and pointed it at my belly. I began to back up with my hands up, saying something along the lines of, "We don't have to do this. What do you want?" He told me he wanted to call my wife back outside. But that wasn't going to happen. I'd rather be stabbed than expose her to this man, so I told him as much. He lunged at me with the knife, grazing and cutting my side as I attempted to grab and redirect his forearm. Then he went to the ground where he lost his knife. I got some knees to connect to his head when the police lights became visible and I heard shouting. Long story short, Buddy was arrested on site, and I provided the badge number and PD of the officer from work a couple days prior in order to corroborate my claims. I decided to press charges, and as far as I know, he's awaiting a court date. I'm sure I'll be involved in it.
Jesus. That's scary. They follow you to your house, man.
I was 15 years old, and back in those days, you'd usually catch my friends and I at the big AMC movie theater. It's a huge theater. Kind of reminds me of an airport almost, and it was a popular hangout for kids that age on the weekdays. I remember going to the movies one night with my friends, and a group of guys approached us. We started chatting and flirting as you do at that age. They said they went to one of the local high schools. One of the guys I was talking to eventually asked me for my phone number, and I gave it to him. I was naive and thought this was harmless. These were the days before cell phones were ubiquitous, so I gave him my home phone number. He called me maybe a day or two after that, and we talked for a bit. We had a few more phone conversations here and there before he asked me on a date. As we made plans to meet, he told me that he needed to tell me something. He admitted that he wasn't actually 16 or whatever age he said he was, and that he wasn't in high school. He was 22.
Oh, come on.
I fell silent, trying to think of my response.
So get out.
But there was more.
Go ahead.
Not only was he 22, he had been in prison and was recently released. Why? Accessory to murder for being in a car when his friend shot someone while driving by.
Oh, Jesus.
I still remember the feeling of being frozen in fear.
Jesus Christ.
I calmly told him that I didn't want to talk to him anymore and to please never call me again, and hung up. After I hung up, the phone immediately started ringing. I picked up, and before I could even say hello, this man that had called back was already screaming at the top of his lungs into the phone. I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but it was along the lines of, "Don't you ever hang up on me," calling me every name in the book. So I hung up again, this time leaving the phone off the receiver. I remember being so scared to tell my parents because I didn't want them to be disappointed in me.
Told them.
They were always so proud of me for making good decisions. It was my fault after all, giving some guy I just met my phone number. So I didn't say anything at first.
A mistake.
The calls kept coming, but to keep my parents in the dark, I usually made sure I was the one answering the phone when it rang. He told me that he put my home phone number into a reverse phone directory and found my address.
Tell your parents.
He would call and say things like, "I like your sister's new green car," to make sure that I knew he was watching the house.
Jesus.
Around this time, I developed a fear of being home alone. I couldn't be alone for even a minute, so if my parents and sister were gone, I'd call a neighbor friend to spend time with me. One night my parents were in bed, but my sister and I were up late watching TV. We saw a car pull into our driveway and sit there with the lights on. I couldn't see who was in it, but I knew. After that, everything stopped. I remember thinking how crazy it was that he had done all of that and then he just disappeared.
Oh boy.
Maybe a year or two later, I was sitting at home watching the finale of an American Idol. It's funny how the little random details you remember when something significant happens. And the phone rang. The caller ID said it was coming from a correctional facility. Confused, I answered it. It was a collect call from you-know-who. I couldn't believe it. I obviously didn't accept the call and hung up.
Jesus.
Never heard from him again.
Jesus.
I told my parents about this years later, and they said, "No wonder you were so scared to be alone." I should have told them at first because it could have escalated even further.
He could have murdered you. Or killed one of your parents or something, your sister.
I started my freshman year of college at a university in my hometown that's pretty nice. I'm not going to share too much about it, but it has a smaller amount of students, but enough that you really don't run into people often. I lived on campus and I was only 17 at the time. I had Tinder, of course, as I was fresh out of a relationship and looking to experience new things in college. I matched with this one boy, Asher, who seemed nice enough. Pretty socially awkward, but I never really minded because I have anxiety issues myself and I'm really sympathetic to it. Because of that, I ignored a lot of warning signs I shouldn't have.
Boy.
We texted for a while and he seems really nice and caring. He wanted to know a lot about me, which I wasn't too keen on sharing, but I told him the basics and we texted kind of regularly. He lived on campus as well and invited me to hang out. At that time, things didn't seem too sketchy, so I was completely down. When I first met him, that's when things started to get uncomfortable. We hung out in his dorm, which was pretty standard overall. I got cozy with him on his couch. I'd say almost cuddling, but not quite. Still really standard. When we started talking more, I realized how uncomfortable things really were. He kept making comments that just put me off, but I tried to ignore them. Things like, "I've never cuddled with anyone before. Sorry if I'm doing it wrong." And so many comments about he already liked me a lot and wanted me to stay forever. Weird word choice, but whatever. He's just trying to be nice. I'll let him down easy. I ended that hangout pretty quickly for some false excuse and went right back to my room. He kept texting and professing how much he was into me, and I told him sorry, but I wasn't looking for that kind of a relationship, so I don't want to keep things romantic. A bad lie, but I'm very non-confrontational and didn't want to be mean. That's when things started to get really weird. He sent me this long paragraph saying about how it was okay I didn't want a relationship now and that he'd wait for me and save his virginity for me. We had never talked about anything sexual. I had never even really told him I liked him or flirted back. I just never turned him down. It was one of the creepiest messages I'd ever received. Unfortunately, that was just the start of all the weird things to come. He wouldn't leave me alone even though I kept trying to de-escalate things, and I kept running into him all over campus. I wasn't sure how he suddenly was nearby when my classes ended, and I wasn't sure why suddenly we're both in the dining hall at the same times, even though I hadn't changed my regular routine. But I tried to brush it off.
Big mistake.
Definitely a mistake.
Big mistake.
I ended up turning him down completely because I was getting creeped out and couldn't figure out how he wasn't understanding that I didn't want anything romantic or sexual with him. He started guilt-tripping me, telling me about how he was going to kill himself and no one was ever going to love him. I've been in a manipulative relationship in the past, and I recognized that behavior right away and shut it down. I told him I couldn't be friends with him, and in my head that was that. He didn't reply for a while, but when he did, all hell broke loose. I was luckily out of town at the time for a concert, so that made me feel a lot better. He went off, sending me paragraph after paragraph about how horrible of a person I was and how I was a slut and needed to get put in my place, etc., etc. Regular R nice guy things. I could handle that. I just ignored it.
Oh, big mistake.
Then, once the regret set in, he made it his mission to win my love however possible. He apologized profusely, telling me how he couldn't be all alone and how I was his only friend and how much he loved me.
Ugh.
Whatever.
Call the cops.
Terrible, but I didn't care about
Go
that.
to the cops.
Then, I guess to prove his dedication, he did the creepiest thing yet. First, he told me he was outside of my room. We did not live in the same dorm building, and you can't get into the building unless you live there. I don't know who let him in.
Jesus.
I wasn't there, and my roommate was out, so that was okay. I texted back at that point and told him to leave and how wrong and creepy that was. And he pulled out his last resort. He just sent me screenshots of my contact in his phone. On Apple devices, you can fill out tons of information and have a notes section.
Okay.
Everything was entirely full. He knew my home address, my room number on campus, my parents' and brothers' names, my pets' names, my schedule. It was terrifying because I'm a fairly private person. My Instagram is my only social media, and I do not share that much of it. I don't think I'll ever find out how he discovered all that about me.
Stalker.
I blocked him on everything right away and reported him to the school.
Yeah.
The school did nothing at all.
Call the cops.
I still see him on campus, and he still tries to approach me when he sees me. I always duck and run. It's worked so far.
He may wind up killing you. Better call the cops. The dude's obsessed. He may wind up killing you.
This happened in January, a year and a half ago, on my way to work one cold, wintry Friday morning. I had a rough start to the day. I remember waking up in a panic as I realized I was holding my phone in my hand and had been hitting snooze on my alarms for the last hour. I wasn't even giving them a chance to sound. Apparently, as soon as my phone started to vibrate, which it does a second or so before the music starts to play, I would hit the side button to silence it. I was exhausted.
Jeez.
I had already worked Monday through Thursday, 10-hour days that typically turn into 12s at that time of the year, and I had just found out that I was pregnant the week prior. So I was even more tired than normal, and this type of behavior was very unlike me. I'm always on time to work. I don't usually work Fridays, but once a year we have our annual mandatory training for all staff members. It's definitely not a day that can be missed or one to be extremely late to. So I quickly throw on some clothes, tie my hair up into a ponytail, brush my teeth, and then out the door I went. I had 25 minutes before I had to be there, so I didn't even let my car warm up. As I pulled out of my driveway, I remember thinking that my dad would kill me if he knew. He's a mechanic, and that was something he's always preached the importance of. I finally got out of the neighborhood, hit the highway, and noticed that my gas light was on. Another annoyance that would cut into my time, but I decided I would stop once I get off on the exit as I had a few minutes to spare. So I did. I pull my car up to the pump and turn it off, hop out into the freezing cold to get the gas started, and quickly jump back in. There's a guy about my father's age pumping gas into his white work truck right in front of me, but I didn't really pay him much mind. Those trucks were everywhere near my workplace at this time, as it's near the river where all the bridge construction had been going on. I'm texting my friend from work and letting her know where I am when I get this feeling someone is looking at me. I look up and make eye contact with the work truck guy. He quickly looks away just as I hear the gas click off. I get back out and don't think anything else about it, and then hop back in ready to go to work. At this point, I probably had about 5 minutes left, which would have been plenty considering the proximity. I pressed the start button. Shit, I thought as I did it again, only to hear the same sound. What do you know, my car won't start. Battery's dead, and for the second time that morning, I thought of my dad and his advice. If I would have just let it warm up, I wouldn't be having this problem right now. I try for a third time, hoping it's the charm, but it's no use. The guy in the work truck notices at this point. He starts making his way towards me, so I step out of my car. He asks me if I'm having car trouble, and I tell him that I think my battery's dead. He tells me that he can help me, but that he doesn't have any jumper cables in his particular truck. He does, however, only work right down the road. He's on one of the bridge crews and has a set there. He says he'll run to get them and come right back. I tell him he doesn't have to do that, but he says he doesn't mind at all. I think about it for a second. My husband's at home already asleep at this point.
Okay.
He works third shift, and I don't really want to wake him if there's no need, and my dad's already at his job.
Okay.
I remember thinking that he probably has a kid my age somewhere,
Okay.
one who he would hope someone would help in this type of situation one day.
Couldn't think.
That he's just probably a father trying to help, and so I say okay and thanked him for his help.
Okay.
He said no problem, that he'd be back in a couple of minutes and left to get the jumper cables.
Okay.
I usually have a set in my car, but had loaned them to my brother the week before and he hadn't returned them yet.
Figures.
As I'm waiting, I call my boss to let her know what's going on and that I would be in as soon as possible.
Okay.
She offers to send someone out there to help, but I tell her about the work truck guy and that I'll call her right back if this doesn't work.
Okay.
By the time I hang up, he's back with the cables and we get my car started back up
Okay.
again. We let it run for a few minutes and make small talk. That's of little importance, like typical strangers do when they try to fill the silence. It's during this time he asks me if I'm a nurse. Immediately I'm alarmed because I'm not wearing any scrubs.
Okay.
I think he can see the shock on my face because he quickly said that he noticed my license plate when he was pulling back in. I laughed in relief and slight embarrassment as I remembered that my license plate is in fact one of those state-issued nursing ones and replied that yes, I am a nurse and that I'm actually running late for
Okay.
work. He asks if I work at the hospital up the road, to which I reply that no, I do not. Now, he's the one that looks confused because where else would a nurse work, right? I don't want to give too much away. I'm still a woman and I watch the news, and I feel a little uncomfortable with my questions.
Good point.
But I don't want to be rude. So I say, oh, I work at a facility not far from here, and I just leave it at
Okay.
that. I mention again how I'm running late and he unhooks the jumper cables. I thank him and again we both get back into our vehicles and drive away. I let him pull out first and then I proceed to take a roundabout way to work, just in case he was
Good
watching.
point.
I felt kind of silly, but you never know,
Yep.
right? I finally get to work and jump straight into the training. I honestly don't think about what had happened that morning again except here and there when my coworkers asked a few questions in the break room during lunch. The long day finally comes to an end and we all head out. As I'm walking towards my car, I see a piece of paper shoved down into the driver's side window. I stand there and look at it for a second, thinking of that guy from the morning, and then glance around the parking lot.
Okay.
I don't see anything unusual and remind myself that he didn't know where I worked. I laugh for being so paranoid because it's probably a note from my best friend who actually does work at the hospital a few blocks over. We leave each other notes occasionally if we see each other's cars we drive by.
Okay.
I started it back when she was going through a rough time the year before, and it just kind of became our thing. As I'm sure you guessed, the note wasn't from
No,
her.
it wasn't.
It was from the work truck guy from that
Okay.
morning. I don't remember it all word for word, but most of it I know I'll never
Go ahead.
forget. It made my skin crawl and thoroughly freaked me the hell out.
Okay.
It listed his phone number at the top with an arrow pointing to it, and it said, "Call soon. Love." It said that he felt we had this connection,
boy.
one of two souls, and that he wanted to continue getting to know
Oh
me.
boy.
That he knew the reason why he was at the gas pump in front of me that morning was so that he could find me, because the Lord knows he had been searching for me so many
Oh,
years
God.
now. That he couldn't just let me slip away. We just couldn't ignore fate like that. No, not when it had been made as clear as it was that morning.
Jesus.
I dropped the piece of paper like it was on fire. Felt my heart drop with all my panic and paranoia that came over reading it. I was so freaked out that I immediately called my mom, my dad, and my husband. I didn't want to drive home. What if he followed me? Did he not see the wedding ring?
Yeah.
How did he even find out where I
He
worked?
followed you.
He literally had to have driven through about 20 other medical facility parking lots just to find my car because I watched him drive off in the other direction and never saw him turn around in my rear view. Trust me, I was watching. My work building is kind of hard to find too, with it being off the main road and on a side street. Especially from a man that lived a couple hours north from here, as he told me earlier during our small talk. He wouldn't have been familiar with the surrounding area enough to just come upon my car like that. I didn't walk in or out of work by myself for months after that. Not until well after the bridge was finished. It's always nighttime when I arrive at work and for that part of the year when I leave. So there's no way in hell that I was going to walk across the dark parking lot by myself.
Idea.
I've never seen him again, but that hasn't stopped me from feeling like someone is watching me at random times.
Jesus.
That type of paranoia just kind of sticks with you. If only I had just listened to my dad's advice and let my damn car warm up. But that's a mistake I have not and will not ever make again. I can guarantee it.
Okay. Okay.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, hit the notification button, and subscribe. And if you would like to submit your own story, make sure to email it to yourmaker6260@gmail.com. And if you would like to help support the channel, I would love if you went and checked out my Patreon page. You can find a link in the description. And if not, just share the video. That works great. I will catch you all in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.
That's true.
Bad bye.
Okay. Okay. Now, those stories. Okay. The last one wasn't as scary, although, like I said, with the note. Like I said, the guy was probably following you. He probably followed you. That's the only way. Or maybe he, like I said, he took hold of your license plate, wrote it down, and I don't know if he did a search on it or something. He might have did that, and so that way he know where you live and all you work and all that stuff. But that one was to me the least freakiest story. Now the first story, the second story, excuse me. The second story with the guy that said he was 22 years old and all that stuff, and then he started calling you. You should have told your parents. Okay, when he first, when he was honest with you and told you all that stuff about him being 22 years old and and been in jail and all that stuff, you should have immediately told your parents. I know why you decided to keep that. That's not a thing to be ashamed of, okay? You're a kid, okay? And this guy's an adult, okay? And an ex-con, and he's trying to get with somebody, obviously, that's underage. So, this guy's not a good guy, okay? Like I said, he could have, luckily for you, he got locked up again because he's such... You got locked up again, but still, he had your phone number and all that stuff. So you're lucky he got locked up because that could have ended real badly, especially him calling back, being all angry and stuff. He had issues, obviously. Now, the first story with the repo guy, that was scary. With him, the guy followed him and he was stalking him back to his house and didn't want his wife to come outside. Get out of here! Come on. Luckily, you could take care of yourself, and he was, disarm him and hold him for the cops, and that was scary. And like I said, you're a small guy, you're not a big guy. And usually, like I said, repo guys are usually big, burly guys, which kind of goes with the profession. Yeah, especially you're gonna have to, repo cars and stuff, and people are always usually angry about that. So, and it's kind of a dangerous thing. So it's good to be a big guy, but as long as you take care of yourself, what seems like you did, and you had enough presence of mind to get that cop's badge number and stuff, so that way when a guy did follow you back to your house, your apartment, you could tell the cops that were responding that this happened, so that you have a witness to what happened before. So that was very smart of you. Now the third story with the college girl, she should again, I know she reported it but she should have go to the cops. You gotta get a restraining order against this guy, because he said the college ain't do nothing about this. Guy is obviously escalating, and this guy is like gone. He's nuts. Okay, he's obsessed with you. okay? And it might get to the point where he tries to hurt you, kidnap you, and hurt you or whatever, because obviously the school ain't doing anything about it when you told them. But you got all those messages and all that stuff. Save those and take them to the cops and get a lawyer and get this guy a restraining order so the cops know about this guy, because I'm telling you, carry some mace and pepper spray and a taser. I'm telling you, because that guy is escalating. He made you his whole world, and now with you rejecting him, he's gonna go off the deep end. Okay, so I would, if I was you, I'd go to the cops, get a restraining order and all that stuff, and get a I get mace, carry a taser. Exactly. Cause hold on, this guy knows where the dorm room you're in and all that stuff. Knows your parents' information and all that stuff. Come on, that's stalker stuff. He's super obsessed with you, and that could only end in one way. Unfortunately, a bad way, I think. So if I was you, that's what I'd go to the cops and just show them all that information. Go to the lawyer, have the lawyer file a restraining order for you against that guy. Let him get served and all that stuff, and tell him, have the cops speak to him until side. Listen, you come anywhere near her, okay, you're getting arrested, okay, and you got to document every weird thing for the cops so he can get locked up before he does something that is going to be permanent. Like I said, like kill you or kidnap you and murder you or something, rape you. You got to protect yourself, okay. Like I said, the fourth story, that was kind of creepy with the guy, putting the note in your car and all that stuff. So you got to be careful about that. Exactly, like you said, you had your wedding ring on. That didn't stop him at all, right? From putting that note saying, you were soulmates. Basically, that's kind of creepy. That he blew through all that and ignored the fact that you got a wedding ring on and all that stuff. And creepy. And like I said, he could have followed you. Or like I said, remember he made note of your license plate, so he might have wrote it down and had a friend that could check and find out exactly where you live and all that stuff. So you got to be careful about those guys, especially if you say it's fate or something. Come on, it's not fate. You just happen to be there, okay? Okay, and this woman's obviously married, okay? So, and he doesn't even pay attention to that, and just come on. So you got to be careful about that. But I think the repo guy story is the scary story, because the guy actually went to your fucking house and he wants you to bring your wife out. Come on, get out of here. But that one I think is the scariest one. That one, because he stalked you right back to your house and stuff, and he wanted to hurt you. And that's all I think. But I think that third story with the girl, the college girl, she needs to get a restraining order. Okay. And document that stuff, because that guy is escalating and it's going to end badly. I think it can only end really badly. So you don't want that to happen. Anyway, let me know what you think of these stories. I'll leave a link to the Umaker's channel in the description box. I'm going to see if I can find a few more videos for him that I can react to, because it sounds like he has some good stories there. Also, I have a link to my social media in the description box: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I also have a link to my other channel, Paul Views and Opinions. Please check that out as well. And this is Trey Pastor saying so long and take care.